morning to all the members connected over here. So the topic that is assigned to me for this particular program is writing selection and supply type of test items. After this particular session, there will be one task assigned to all of you based on the input provided in this particular session. So when it comes to design a written test, there are many choices available with the faculty. So the teacher can go for essay type of questions that can be closed response, that can be open response, to check the creative ability of the student, to check their analytical ability, to check that up to what level it is possible for the teacher while delivering the instruction to them to promote their higher order of thinking. But at the same time, when it comes to check the lower order abilities of the student, so when I said lower order ability of the student, so maybe I want to evaluate the performance of my student up to the level of remembrance. I want to check the understanding level of the student. I want to check that whether my student is able to compare two different phenomena or compare two different processes, or my student is able to differentiate between the content given or the information provided to them. I can go for multiple choice test item. I can go for fill in the blanks. I can go for objective type of test item. And even for the higher order thinking abilities, I can design interpretive exercises for my students also. So there are variety of questions available with the teacher to give to the students to evaluate their performance. And even for classroom activities, the teacher can design these type of statements or these type of items to quickly obtain the feedback in terms of their instructional input. So when it comes to designing such type of item, there are certain rules that the teacher need to follow. In this particular session, we are going to describe those rules by giving examples that we have picked from the various question papers only that is being designed by the faculty members. So by this note, we are going to start with this particular session, writing selection and supply type of a test item. As far as our new education policy 2020 is concerned, there is a major focus on the assessment part of the student. So when it comes to the assessment, it is being said in the new education policy that we need to focus on transforming assessment for optimizing learning and development of all the students. So whenever the teacher is giving any classroom based activity to the student, the major objective of the teacher is to promote the level of the student or to develop the level of the student. So when we said develop the level of the student or promote the lifelong learning skills among students, it means when the teacher is designing various assessment practices, there must be variety involved in those assessment practices. So maybe there is one student in my class whose remembering and understanding ability is very high, but I need to give practice to that particular candidate to enhance higher order thinking skills that can be evaluation or that can be synthesization of the information. That is why it is being said that in your classroom, basically when we are assessing the performance of our student and we want our student to develop as a lifelong learner, there must be diversity of activities, there must be variety of assessment that need to be given to the student so that we can check at what level the student is right now, and from this particular level how it is possible for me to shift that student to the higher order of thinking or to the next level of understanding. So that is why in a new education policy 2020, they said assessment must be regular, formative, and competency based. So when it said the assessment must be regular, so while the teacher is delivering instructions to the student, along with the delivery of the instruction, the teacher need to plan lesson in such a way that within the lesson itself, within the lecture itself, the teacher is able to assess the performance of that particular candidate. And that assessment is a formative assessment. So when we said formative assessment means the score or the grade or the remark that the student is able to obtain from the teacher is not going to add to the final score sheet of the student. The purpose of formative assessment is to gradually improve the quality of the work that is being produced by the student in the presence of the faculty. it must be competency based. So when we said assessment must be competency based, my first question to all the group members, that for 21st century learners, what we analyze or what we observe in our classes, that what is meant by competency based assessment for our students. So what kind of competency they need to develop? Any member from the group? So in 21st century learners, what kind of competency we need to develop? Yes, any member from the group? Knowledge, skill, attitude, and assessment. Thank you very much, Akshay Kumar sir. Any another member from the group? What we mean by competency for
The
21st
problem
century
solving
learners?
ability.
The problem solving ability. May I know your good name, ma'am?
Dr. Amandeep.
Thank you very much, ma'am. So problem solving ability.
Able to understand the emotions of the students also,
Able to understand the emotions of the student
along
also.
with the technical knowledge. The teacher should be able to understand about the soft skills also.
Thank you
Overall
very
development of the student.
Okay, thank you very much, ma'am. So there are 4 different responses. Mr. Akshay Kumar sir said knowledge, skill, and attitude assessment. Dr. Amandeep Kaur ma'am said problem solving ability, and at the same time, we must be able to assess the soft skills of the students also in terms of their emotional intelligence. Another response that is received from Dr. Ashish Bhardwaj sir, the critical thinking ability of the student. Another response, creativity and innovation, the ability to do something successfully or efficiently, innovative problem solving ability, knowledge, collaborative learning. So thank you very much for all the responses. So when it comes to develop competency among today's learner, and it is being said that assessment must be regular, it means whenever the teacher is designing the assessment practices, whatever input that have been provided by all of you, you said creativity and innovation. It means when you are designing statements for assessment, creative and innovative statements also need to be there. So maybe in a class, the teacher can give group-based assignment where the teacher can ask the student to design a prototype model, or even the teacher can give instruction to the student to design something, maybe by using paper and pen only. So it is not actually the prototype model that students are going to design, but by collection of ideas the students are able to do something new while sitting into the class. When we said problem solving ability and we said 21st century learner, so sometimes the teacher need to give structured problems to the student, but at the same time, when we want to develop higher order abilities among students, we need to give some of the ill-structured problems to our students also, so that group of the students can work together. They are able to reframe the problem. They are able to think the problem from multiple dimensions, and then they are able to solve a problem. So it is not only the remembering or understanding that we are going to develop among our students, or it is not only that we are going to check their memorizing ability in terms of assessment. We want our student to do something while sitting into our classes. So that is why we are designing competency based assignment or assessments for our students. So such kind of assessment activities enable us to promote learning. So we are not spoon feeding information to the student, but we allow them to perform certain activities while sitting into the class. So if my say, for example, in mechanical engineering or say in chemical engineering, the 5th semester or 6th semester student whose fundamentals or the technical vocabulary for that specific branch is already developed. So when I'm giving assessment or when I'm giving assignment to those students, I am not going to give a written assignment to the group of the student. I can design one problem based assignment for my student, and maybe 1 or 2 classes I spare for that particular activity only. That student need to perform that activity while sitting into the class in the presence of the faculty, when the teacher is there to give them valuable feedback, when the teacher is there to give them direction, when the teacher is there to give them or deliver them additional input that is required at the part of the group of the student. So these kind of assessment activity help us to promote learning and develop our student. Our assessment is focus on learning. So initially, when it comes to design assessment and evaluation activities for the student, there is a trend to know the rank of the student or the merit of the student. But as far as the technical education system is concerned, nowadays we are more focusing on the acceptance of the student in the world of work rather than going for individually for the marks or for the merit. We at the end of the formal education, at the end of the formal degree, we always ask to our student in which company or what workplace they prefer and how they are getting those kind of opportunities. So our assessment, how the world is going to accept our student population if our students are able to do something new to for that particular organization or for that particular firm. So industries nowadays want students who are very good in terms of technical skills, but at the same time, they also demand soft skills from the student because of the changing work culture. So when we are designing assessment, as rightly added by Dr. Amandeep Kaur ma'am, it is not only the technical skills that we are going to assess, but at the same time, we need to provide opportunities to our students where they can work for the development of their soft skills. Few of the assessment activities specifically in class also need to be related to the higher order thinking skills of the student. So when we said higher order thinking skills of the student, so when the teacher is designing assessment activities for the student, few of the statements, few of the questions need to be related to analysis, critical thinking, or conceptual clarity. So the point of discussion is when we give such kind of assessment to our student, only then our students are able to do something new. Only then our students are able to engage in the process of learning. Only then as a teacher it is possible for me to obtain feedback and now make a decision that what kind of instructional delivery is essential for the student. So these are the demand of assessment and activities. So whenever we are designing supply type of items or we are designing selection type of items for our students, we need to think upon that it is not only the remembering of understanding that we are going to assess as far as our student performance is concerned, but when I'm designing matching type of items or objective type of statements for my student, my focus also need to be on the development of higher order thinking skills among students. Another important thing that we need to consider as far as the design of various question items are concerned, in NEP 2020, they emphasize that the secondary board exam and entrance exams are eating away the valuable time for true learning with excessive exam coaching and exam preparation. And these exams also force students to learn a very narrow band of content material in a single stream. So they said the board exam will be redesigned to encourage holistic development by the way of discouraging the coaching culture and exam preparation. In certain subject, question paper may be redesigned to have two parts, one part objective type with MCQ and other part is of descriptive type of statement. So in a technical education system, when a school student come to us, maybe in the years to come, that student already working on the development of higher order thinking skill. Because in NEP, they clearly emphasize that we need to shut down this coaching culture and we need to provide a wider range to our student as far as the content information is concerned. So rather than giving focus on memorizing of the information, the focus of the school system must be on the development of understanding level of the student. And when these set of student is absorbed by the technical education system, we as a technical faculty need to enhance our level of instruction, and at the same time whatever assessment and evaluation practices we are designing for our students, that need to be divided into two different parts. One part is mainly focus on supply type of test item, and another part of their question paper must be focused on the selection type of an test item. So when we said descriptive type of a question or MCQ type of a question, with the help of MCQ type question items, it is possible for me to evaluate the remembering and understanding of the student. And at the same time, it is possible for me to design questions that can check the creative ability of the student. It is possible for me to design MCQs that can check the analysis ability of my student. And when we said descriptive type of a question, maybe it is a closed response question or an open-ended question, it is possible for me to check the ability of the student to think about the problem from the multiple angles. So when the teacher is designing such kind of a statement, we need to consider that in the years to come, whatever student absorbed by the technical education system, they are highly trained at school level, because the schools are not going to focus on the memorizing of the information. They are going to focus on the development of the information by the learners. So likewise, we need to change the way we are assessing and evaluating the performance of our students. So in nutshell, the way education system is undergo such reform, we as a faculty need to set items for formative and summative assessment that will ultimately help us to develop higher order cognitive abilities among students. So our focus is on the development of higher order cognitive ability among students. So keeping this in view, there can be two different type of test items that can be designed by the teacher. The very first one is the supply type of a test item. What we mean by supply type of a test item, where the student need to construct a response. So in simple terms, when I said supply type of a test item, when the student is need to construct a response, so these can be, the response can be in the form of a word, the response can be in the form of a phrase, the response can be a single sentence, or response can be a paragraph. So supply type of a test item can be short answer, closed and open-ended response, essay type of question. It can be one word answer. So these kind of items, when designed by the teacher, is considered as supply type of a test item. And selection type of a test item, when the responses are already given to the student need to correct the right response from the different alternative given. So those kind of items are considered as selection type of test item. Before we are going into the details of supply and selection type of test item, my next question to all of you is, can anyone from the group differentiate between formative and summative assessment? Any member from the group? Yes, any member from the group? Yes, sir. There is one candidate. Yes, is there any question from the candidate side, participant side? Yes, Suni sir. You can unmute and ask question.
Ma'am, according to me, formative means when you have learned something and you have incorporated that learning and applied somewhere in your problem to develop an answer. And summative would mean just reading, going through it, just understanding it and submitting the required work only, whatever has been asked. Submitting only the required answer. But formatting means developing the entire idea, developing the entire or analyzing the entire problem statement. So that is the difference I have analyzed.
Thank you very much, ma'am. So Dr. Rupali, the question is, can you please differentiate between summative and formative assessment? Mr. Akshay Kumar sir said summative at the end of the lecture. So thank you very much, sir, for the response. Any another member? Formative assessment is in the beginning of the lecture. So there is one another response in the beginning and summative at the end of the lecture. Any member from the group who can differentiate between summative and formative assessment?
Yes, ma'am. Hello. Am
Yes,
I
ma'am.
audible?
Yeah,
Yes,
you are
ma'am.
audible to me.
Yeah, ma'am. Formative is in the beginning, and it assess that the person is ready that to know the what about we are talking, and summative is at the end to know the outcome that whether the learner can provide the outcome. We can assess from that. This is the main major difference.
Thank you very much, ma'am.
Can I say
So,
something, ma'am?
yes, ma'am.
Yeah, ma'am. So I think most of us have been able to correctly express what the difference is, in the sense that formative is an ongoing thing, which we do on a regular basis, on a daily basis. We might be taking class tests, or we might be giving them assignments, or we might be engaging them in a group discussion in the class. So we are monitoring their overall learning, in an ongoing manner, and maybe uh, we assess them on that basis, and we keep certain marks for that. So that is formative in nature. And at the end of your completion of your subject course curriculum, when we test them with their end term exams, where the stakes are high, and when they have to get good grades and could get good marks, because that will count for their overall scores. I think that is summative in nature.
Thank you very much, ma'am. So, very rightly added by ma'am. When it comes to the formative assessment is an ongoing activity. So, when I'm planning for my lecture, at the same time as a faculty, I need to understand, I need to design activity specification that at what phase of the lecture I'm going to assess the performance of my student. It can be the cognitive performance, it can be the affective performance, it can be the psychomotor performance. So within the lecture, during the lecture, the teacher need to take certain pauses where the teacher need to collect the information from the student that whether they are able to understand the content that is being delivered by the teacher. So when it comes to the formative assessment, it is not essential for the teacher to design written tests. The teacher can ask for the verbal inputs also. The teacher can give an online quiz also for the student. The teacher can also assign an activity to the students to perform while sitting into the class. So within the class, when the teacher is collecting feedback in terms of instructional input, that is the formative assessment. And based on the input received by the teacher is going to make certain instructional decisions. So for example, as a faculty, you designed a very good PowerPoint presentation and you consider that your verbal explanation is excellent as far as this content information is concerned. But after 20 minutes of the lecture, when you start asking questions to the students and students are not ready with the responses. So maybe that PowerPoint presentation, that verbal explanation is very good at your part. You think that your students are able to understand the content, but on the other end, as far as student population is concerned, they are not able to go through the information that is being delivered by the faculty. So within the class, the teacher need to make an instructional decision that PowerPoint method is not working for my student. What can be the another way by the use of which it is possible for me to simplify the content information and give it to my students so that they are able to understand the content fully. So formative assessment is not only helping the student population, but at the same time, it is also improving the teaching effectiveness of the faculty. So formative assessment, as rightly added by ma'am, it is a regular ongoing activity. In your everyday class, there must be few of the activities designed by the teacher that help the teacher to collect information from the student population as far as instructional delivery is concerned. When it comes to the summative assessment, I'm not saying evaluation, I'm saying assessment. Another member in this particular group provided us feedback that summative assessment is at the end of the lecture. Say while designing your lesson plan, you have selected few of the learning outcomes for your students. So at the end of the lecture, if you work for one or two learning outcomes, at the end of your class, at the end of your lecture, you are going to assess that whether your students are able to achieve those learning outcomes or not. If they are not able to achieve those learning outcomes, say for example, The one learning outcome that is being designed by the teacher is my student must be able to synthesize information. So when I said my student at the end of the lecture is able to synthesize the given information. So as a teacher, when I'm delivering instructions to my student, what kind of information is provided to them? From where the student need to synthesize that information? Is there any additional web resources provided to the student and students are able to access those web resources while sitting into the class? If these kind of opportunities provided to the student, only then it is possible for my student to achieve that learning outcome. And maybe at the end of the class, 10 to 15 minutes given to the student to complete that activity, and teacher is going to assess that whether they are able to achieve that learning outcome or not. So at the end of the complete lecture, when the teacher want to check, when the teacher want to assess that students are able to achieve those learning outcomes or not, that is your summative assessment. So based on this, my next question to all of you is it possible for me to design a test that help me to check summative as well as formative assessment, that help me to carry forward summative and formative assessment? And if yes, what type of statements need to be there in that test? So are you going to give multiple choice questions? Are you going to give short answer type question? Are you going to design essay type of questions for your student? What kind of questions you are going to design for your students for summative assessment and for formative assessment? Yes, any member from the group? Yes, Dr. Opali.
Ma'am, for formative assessment, in my view, it can be objective question, that multiple choice type of question can be, and for summative, it can be a bit elaborate or like short essay type question can be can be given for the test or for evaluation for
Thank you very much,
to check
Opali.
the learning outcome.
Yeah, thank you very much, ma'am.
Ma'am, can I answer from remote center?
Yes, ma'am.
Ma'am, I think according to me, we can give a case study in which the student can use all the concepts which he or she has studied to evaluate his formative answer. And at the end, I can take a statement from the student. What have you analyzed? What have you gathered? What information or what knowledge you have gathered from the case study? That will help me evaluate both formative as well as summative.
Thank you very much, ma'am.
Thank you.
So when it comes to design formative and summative kind of assessment, it is completely the choice of the faculty. So as ma'am rightly added, that case study can be a very good approach. With the help of case study method, it is possible for me to assess the lower order ability of my student, and at the same time it is possible for me to evaluate the performance of my student as far as their higher order cognitive abilities are concerned. So within a class, it is possible for the teacher to check or to assess all kind of learning outcomes probably designed by the teacher. So in a classroom, when the maximum time is not available with the teacher and teacher want to assess the performance of the student, so maybe the multiple choice or maybe the short answer type can be the best choice. If the time is available with the faculty, the teacher can give open-ended response question to the students, where the teacher can check the analytical ability of the students also. So it is completely depends upon how the teacher is going to design a lesson, how much information the teacher is going to provide to the student, and how much time the teacher is kept spare for the student to perform certain activities. So if your students are matured enough, so when I said if your students are matured enough, maybe for fourth, fifth, sixth semester student, when I'm designing classes, rather than giving all the input to my student, I provide opportunity to my student to collect information and then design responses, and those responses must be submitted by the student within the class itself. So when the teacher is available with the students, a student, rather than noting down the information or rather than the teacher is repeating information again and again that is readily available with the student, the teacher design activity and help student to perform certain activities. So that kind of formative assessment help us to develop the students who are matured enough in terms of their understanding. If our learners are not matured enough, so maybe the student in a first semester, second semester, and in a third semester, when the technical information is very much new for that particular candidate, the teacher, after providing input, only assess the performance of the student. So for those learners, the teacher need to design activity specification in such a manner that when the teacher is delivering the information to the student, along with that information, the teacher is going to assess the performance of the student. So there can be a simple question that is asked by the teacher after delivering the information. There can be a quiz, there can be a matching type exercise, there can be a fill in the blanks activity that can be given to the student by using offline or by using online mode. So when it comes to design formative and summative kind of assessment for the student, the teacher need to consider the level of the student, at the same time the nature of the content, and how the teacher is going to design those lessons for the student, how much time is available with the teacher, and up to what extent it is possible for the teacher to assess the performance of the student. So when I said up to what extent, if the teacher is able to design those assessment, design those activities online for the student, it is a very good option for the teacher to go online, because many of the students nowadays want integration of technology. If the teacher is not much comfortable to integrating technology for assessment practices, the teacher either need to have a professional training, or for classroom activities in the initial phase, the teacher can go for a pen and paper kind of an approach. But it is the teacher who is going to decide that what kind of items I am going to design for my student. So both can be the option. The teacher can go for multiple choice, or teacher can go for extended kind of statements for the student. So when it comes to the supply type of an test items in which the student has to respond to a question by supplying a word, phrase, sentence, or paragraph of its own. That is why it is being said supply type of an test item. So there are three different type of test item under this particular heading. One is the short answer type. It also includes fill in the blanks, because the student has to construct the response for these type of items. Second is the structured response type, and third one is the extended response type of an extended response type of items for the student. So mainly in the section B and section C of our paper, where the 5 mark statement, 7 mark statement, or 10 mark statement given to the student, mainly we go by the structured response question. Those can be extended response, or those can be the closed response statements also. The section A of the paper, where the 2 mark statement or 1 mark statement given to the student, these are mainly the short answer type of the question. So when the teacher is giving weightage to these items also, the teacher need to consider how much weightage I am going to give to these kind of statements. So supply type can be divided into three different categories. The short answer type question, second is the structured response question, and another is extended response question, that can be closed response, or that can be open response type of statement. So when it comes to the extended response question, it allows the student to select any factual information. So when it comes to the extended response question, basically we are going to check the memorizing ability of our student. So student need to give factual information when the teacher is called for extended response of the question. So when we are going to use these kind of statement, when you want your student to produce something, to organize and to express ideas. At the same time, when the teacher wants the student to integrate learning in different areas. Say, for example, you have defined something or explain a concept to the student, and now you want that concept to apply in a given situation. So the principle, another example is the working principle is explained by the teacher for XYZ machinery. Now you want your student to apply that working principle in a given situation to solve a given problem. So in this particular scenario, the teacher is not only collecting information in terms of memorizing ability of the student, but at the same time, the teacher wants the student to apply that learned information. So, extended response of question help us to integrate learning from the different areas. When the teacher wants the student to produce something new, to create an original form, evaluate the worth of the idea. So when we said compare, when we said evaluate, when we said identify, when we said locate, these kind of statements are basically to evaluate the worth of the idea. So extended response of question, when the student have ample opportunity to provide information in what way he or she wants to provide information as per the statement designed by the teacher. So these are the more elaborative information that we are able to get from our student population. Another is restricted response of question. Restricted response question usually limit both the content and form of the student response. So when I said explain the working principle, so working principle for XYZ machinery is already explained, labeled with the help of the diagram. The student need to give that response. So it is limited in terms of content and it is limited in the form of the student response. So with the help of restricted response question, it is not possible for me to check the creative ability of my student, but at the same time, with the help of extended response question, it is possible for me to check the creative ability of the student. So restricted response questions we are going to use when the student need to explain the cause and effect relationship. Yeah, another example can be the describe applications of a principle, present relevant argument, formulate tenable hypothesis and formulate a valid conclusion, state necessary assumption, describe the limitation of the data, explain any method or any procedure. So these type of statements are considered as restricted response statement where the teacher delimit the response that need to be provided by the student. Next type of test item is selection type of a test item. So when we said selection type of a test item, it requires student to select response from a given option. It is also called objective type of test item. So in selection type of test item, we have again three different kind of categories. The very first one is alternate choice test item. Second one is multiple choice test item and fourth one is the matching type of test item. So when we said alternate choice test item, alternate choice test items can be the true or false statement, and there are certain variations also that we can use for alternate choice test item. So when we said the variations, I will tell you. Rather than writing true and false, we can also give yes or no, agree, disagree, right or wrong. So these can be the different variations that we can use instead of writing true and false. And there are certain rules for designing such kind of test item. So one by one, we are going to explain those rules to all of you. The very first one is the design each test item to measure an important learning outcome. So now read the below statement. One is the poor item and second one is the better item, and identify what is the difference given in poor item or the better item. Now, my request to all the participants to kindly read the statement given on the PowerPoint presentation and try to analyze that what is the difference between the poor item and the better item. Yes, any member from the group?
What are we required to do, ma'am? If you could kindly elaborate
There
once
are
again.
two different type of items. One is the poor item and another is better item. Can you please analyze what is the difference between poor item and better item?
I think, ma'am, the better item is,
It is
is
already given to you, ma'am. You
yeah, it
just
is
have, yeah.
mentioned there. It is worded in a much better way. The way it has been phrased, the way it has been framed, I think it has complete information in that sense, that it's not vague in its framing.
Thank you very much, ma'am. And any other member who would like to give input?
Ma'am, the scope of ambiguity in the better item is not there. There's less dependency on the assumptions. There's less scope of assumptions to be made by the person who is reading and trying to answer it. So it's an unambiguous statements are in the better items.
Thank you very much, ma'am. So as far as these two items given on the screen, a poor item we have taken from the question papers only, that is designed by the faculty member and given for the final evaluation activity to the students. So when it comes to the scientific writing, basically, so we all are the technical faculty. So whenever we design any statement for our student, that statement must be accurate in all sense. So in a scientific writing, all the standard conditions need to be given to the student. So the statement itself need to be very factful. So the teacher written in the question paper as falling body accelerate at 9.81 meter per second square, but the standard conditions need to be given by the teacher. So free falling body accelerate at 9.81 meter per second square at sea level. Water expand when heated. If the water at a room temperature is warmed, it will increase in volume. So it is not only the scientific writing need to be correct in all sense, but at the same time, whenever the teacher is designing such type of items, the conditions need to be given to the student. As rightly added by ma'am, ambiguity, vagueness in the statement, worded correctly, these are three major requirements of alternate choice text item. So whenever we are designing such type of an test item, the very first rule that we need to follow is write statement which are entirely true or entirely false. Example for this particular rule is the statement number second, that is water expand when heated. Design each item to measure an important learning outcome. So maybe the weightage given to true and false statement is only 1 mark. So when the teacher is designing such type of an item, only one learning outcome the teacher is going to evaluate. Avoid using statement which will provide your student with clue to the correct answer. So when we are giving such kind of statement to our student certainly makes guesses. So those can be the tenable guesses, but at the same time, when we want to compare the performance of my candidate, of one candidate within another candidate, there must be a clear distinctions between the ability of the student. So the poor item given by the faculty in a paper was road curves are generally provided with super elevation. So student can make a very educated guess from this particular statement. So the better item that can be given by the teacher, maybe road curves are provided with super elevation to provide stability to the moving vehicles. So no clue need to be there. Write concise, clear and correct statement. So our major objective specifically in a technical subject is to check the level of understanding of our student. We are not going to give grammatical corrections. We are not going to give the level of the student in terms of reading ability. My major learning outcome is to check the technical ability I am able to develop among the student population. So rather than writing the long sentences, rather than adding the component of reading apprehension, reading comprehension in a paper or in a test, the teacher needs to directly come to the statement that he or she wants to evaluate. So the four item frictional resistance acting when a body is about to move is limiting friction which is less than sliding friction. The teacher can simply write it as limiting friction is less than sliding friction. So basic level of understanding is already developed. Now we are going to assess the performance of the student. So I can give a clear statement to my students to assess. Avoid using statements that contain negative or double negative word. So in teaching learning activity, most of the time we need to use positive vocabulary only for our student, that ultimately help us to engage our students in the process of learning and motivate them. So teacher needs not to use the negative or the double negative statements for the student. So those statements can easily be converted into a positive statement just by changing the words. So spring balance does not measure the mass of the body, so it is only a true and false statement. The teacher can also write it as spring balance measure the mass of the body. None of the steps, so double negative in experiment was unnecessary. So all of the steps in the experiment were necessary. So avoid statement that contain negative or double negative word. Write items that present one idea at a time. So four item given by the teacher was salt can be dissolved in water and can be recovered by evaporation of the solvent. Better item, salt is dissolved in water. Salt in solution can be recovered by evaporation of the solvent. So that can be the true statement. Action and reaction are equal and opposite. So it is simply the verbatim that is selected from the textbook, and this is the statement that is known by many of the candidates. So rather than giving such kind of a statement, the teacher can give an application based alternate choice test item. So teacher can convert this statement as when a 20 kg weight is placed on a table, the table exert a reaction of 40 kg on the weight. So now the student need to apply the learned information and give the accurate response. Avoid window dressing. So rather than writing the long extensive sentences, the teacher need to directly go to the statement to save the time of the student. So the poor item given by the teacher, since we live in an age where everything is measured, that we buy vegetable by the rupee and we drive so many kilometers, we must also have a unit with which we measure angle. The unit is called a gram. The teacher can simply ask as angles are measured in units called gram. There are certain rules for constructing alternate choice of test item. So arrange the item in a random order so that there is no pattern of the answer available. Otherwise, many of the students will make a guess out of it and try to get good marks. The number of true and false statements should be approximately equal if it is not possible for you. So rather than writing a statement in true and false fashion, the teacher can select another alternative. True and false statement should be approximately equal in length also. So that also need to be considered by the teacher. So these can be the variation yes and no, agree, disagree, right or wrong. At the same time, when it comes to design alternate choice of a test item, it is also possible for the teacher to assess higher order ability among students. So whether indicate whether the statement is true or false. If false, change the statement to make it correct. So that can also be the variation selected by the teacher to make it more appropriate, more for the student population. Another type of test item under this category is multiple choice of a test item. So in multiple choice of a test item, there are three different components involved. The very first one is the stem of the item. So when it comes to the stem of the item, there can be two different variations the teacher can use. Stem of the item can be a direct question. Stem of the item can be in the form of incomplete statement. And when it comes to writing a multiple choice test item, the stem is always mentioned at the top of the statement. Set of option, there can be four different options selected by the teacher. There can be three different options selected by the teacher, or the teacher can go for five different options also. So if the teacher is selected three different options, and maybe the teacher is going to design 20 different multiple choice items, so in every item, there must be three different options available. So uniformity in terms of options need to be there. Next is the key, that is correct answer among the options. So if you have selected 4 different options, from those 4 different options, 1 will be the key and 3 will be the distractors. So these are the major 3 essential elements of multiple choice test item. So the certain rules for writing the test item is a stem of the item should be meaningful by itself. A matte surface has give no reflection of light, has specular reflection of light, has diffused reflection of light, has gives semi-diffused reflection of light. So this particular statement is not better item. Another example is South America is a flat and arid country. Import coffee from US, has larger population than US, was settled mainly by colonialists from Spain. It is again a poor item designed by the faculty, so stamp need to be meaningful. So teacher can write it as most of the South America was settled by colonialists from England, France, Holland and Spain. So item must be meaningful. Use negatively stated item stamp only when significant learning outcome is required. In alternate choice test item, we write as negative and double negative items are not allowed. But in terms of multiple choice test item, the teacher can go by negatively statement item if there is a significant learning outcome that the teacher want to inquire. So which of the following is not a vector quantity? So this is a poor item that can be converted into a positive item. So which of the following is a vector quantity? So if possible, we need to avoid negatively stated item, but if it is essential, we can go by the negative items also in multiple choice item. Which of the following operation cannot be performed by a shaping machine? This is again considered as a negative item or a poor item. So we can simply change the stem as which of the following operation can be performed by a shaping machine. So in this particular case, the key can be a different for the asked statement. Another is item stem should include as much as of the wording as possible. So the poor item given by the teacher is the main condition for the application of law of triangle of forces is that the forces, that the forces, that the forces, that the forces. So we can simply shift these 3 words in the stem itself. So the better item can be the main condition or application of triangle of forces that the forces should be. Next, the options can be given by the teacher. In objective testing, the word objective. In objective testing, the word objective refers to the method of. So STEM become more meaningful. Avoid unintended clues. Keywords from the stem or their synonyms are repeated in the correct answer. Now, in a workshop practice exam, the statement given was the type of the enclosure on a motor installed in a mine having an explosive atmosphere is a flame-proof type. So any student can make a guess that when it comes to the explosive atmosphere, it must be related with the flame. So teacher need to avoid these kind of statements given to the student that ultimately provide hint to the student to identify a correct answer. Another poor item given in the paper of mathematics was when used in conjunction with a square, the left vertical edge of the triangle is used to draw vertical lines. Again, this item is considered as a poor item. The inward tilt of kingpin angle is called kingpin angle. So again a poor item. The angle between critical vertical line and the center line of the kingpin is known as camber angle. So these kind of statements need to be avoided by the teacher. Another rule that we need to consider that all the responses formed by the teacher must be consistent grammatically or semantically with the stem than is any of the other response. So poor item is an electrical transformer can be used for strong up electricity to change the voltage. It convert electrical energy into mechanical energy. Alternating current is changed to the direct current. So again, all the responses are not grammatically consistent. So this item is considered as a poor item. Another example of a poor item is a steel ball and a ball of cotton would fall at the same speed in a, it means atmosphere is not a right answer, vacuum, any fluid or gases. So grammatically the options given by the teacher is not accurate. Unusually long key, the student consider it as a right answer. So item of stem of the item suggests answer to the another item. The boiling point of the water is options given as 42.4 degree F, 232 degree F, and at a sea level in open container and 98 degree F. So either the teacher need to change the stem or teacher need to reframe the options given by the teacher in a paper. An odd man out, thus again the student make it as a hint and select it as a option to give as an answer. That is again a correct answer, so that also need to be avoided by the teacher. Another rules to design multiple choice test items are, the very first one is avoid use of the words like always and entirely. So most of the statement, so after attending this particular session, observe or read few of the question paper, and you come to after analysis you come to know that most of the statement that started with always and entire indicate the statement is false. Sometimes maybe mostly indicate the statement is true. So these kind of known things need to be avoided by the teacher. Arrange numerical options in ascending or descending order of magnitude, and item involving arithmetic operation. Distractor should be obtained by following an erroneous procedure. Avoid the use of all of the above and none of the above. That is why in the initial phase of this particular discussion, we said when it comes to the set of options, the teacher can go by 3, the teacher can go by 4, the teacher can go by 5. And while designing the paper, if teacher come to know that in fourth option, I do not have many of the choices available. So either I'm writing is it as all of the above or none of the above. So I can select 3 different options for my students also. It is not essential for me to go for 4 set of options for the student. So if possible, avoid all of the above and none of the above in a given statement. So you have given 4 different options for your student, but the last option many of the students will not focus upon. And when you said all of the above, maybe the student is not going to read the 3 above statements given by the teacher. So if possible, the teacher need to avoid the use of all of the above and none of the above. Instead, use multiple response item in a situation where more than one attribute is correct. So 1 and 2, it may be 2 and 3, 2 and 4, 3 and 4. So rather than writing is that none of the above, we can make combination and give those combinations as a option for our students. So that can also be the variation. Which of the following is the most economical source of heat for the home use? So the stem is not complete, and the correctness of the key should be beyond dispute. So when we said economical in what sense? That need to be defined by the teacher in the stem itself. So does economical refer to the cost, it refer to efficiency, or it refers to the accessibility? So that need to be the part of the statement. Place the choices at the end of the incomplete statement. So rather than giving a first word to fill by the candidate, the incomplete statement need to be at the end of the stem given by the teacher. So transformer, condenser, motor, choke will step up voltage. So stem must always be in at the top of the question, and after that the statements or the options need to be given to the candidate. Base each item on a single central problem. So for pharmacy science, the poor statement given in the paper was, in case of sunstroke, the victim should have his head lowered, has a weak pulse, should be given stimulant, should have cold water poured over him, has a pale face. So these can be the symptoms in a patient. So one correct statement need to be there. So what symptom of sunstroke? What is the symptom of sunstroke? So the major answer need to be identified from the given options. Another important thing that we need to consider in alternate test item is way to make distractor plausible. So the very first is whenever the teacher is assessing the performance of the student on formative basis, the teacher come to know that these are the common errors produced by the group of the students. So those errors can become distractors of your statement. When the teacher is designing distractor, that must be homogeneous and similar in content to the correct answer. Use distractor that are grammatically consistent with the item stem to avoid any ambiguity in the given statement. Use textbook language or other phraseology that has appearance of the truth. Use incorrect answers that are likely to result from the student misunderstanding or carelessness. Make distractor similar to the correct answer in length, in vocabulary, in sentence structure, and complexity of thought. So while designing the different distractors, the teacher need to consider all these parameters. So these are the certain rules for constructing multiple choice test item. So present a single clearly formulated problem in a STEM. Make the responses independent and mutually exclusive. An incomplete statement format is used. Option should come at the end of the STEM. The STEM of the item should set a specific task. So what that specific task is, whatever the learning outcome designed by the teacher, and teacher want to assess the performance of the student for that learning outcome. The second is the candidate should not be asked for his opinion. So when the teacher is designing a multiple choice test item for the student, in that particular case, so since the weightage given to this particular statement may be of 1 mark only, so when the teacher is designing such type of a statement, the teacher is not going to ask for any unintended clue, guess, or opinion of the student. There must be specific information that need to be asked to the student. Key to one STEM should not provided in the information given in another item when two items are used in the same test. Say for example, there are 10 different items designed by the teacher. So say suppose the item number 1, the correct answer is identified by the student, and that correct answer become the STEM for the item number 8. So that is not desirable. So every statement must be unique by nature. So student need to read all the statement, then only the student is able to get to give response for those statements. When several different items are based on the same data, so sometimes the teacher is also designing interpretive exercises based on the content given. So in that particular case, the teacher is again going to design multiple choice test item. So it should not be necessary for the candidate to answer one item correctly in order to obtain correct answer to the another item. So items need not to be correlated with each other. So every item must talk about an individual learning outcome. Avoid two or more options, which means same things although worded differently. So that also need to be avoided by the faculty. And again, as in the case of alternate choice test item, in case of multiple choice test items also, the correct answer must be given in an random fashion. So that also need to be there. So I hope the rule for alternate choice test item and multiple choice test item is clear to all of you.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, any question till now? I will pass this PowerPoint presentation to all of you. So in future also you can refer to these rules. So the third type of items that we can design are interpretive items. So interpretive items form multiple choice test item, and it is possible for the teacher to assess higher cognitive behavior with the use of these exercises. In this particular case, interpretive test items, say for example, in the subject of research methodology, when I'm dealing with the topic of data analysis. So in data analysis, there can be different statistical tool or test applied by the student. So I can give a data matrix to my student and ask my student to define that what kind of sampling technique they are going to imply for this set of data, and after apply that sampling technique, what can be the probable results they are able to obtain out of this. So this is an interpretive kind of an exercise. I simply provide a case study to my student, and based on that case study, I already designed few of the test items for my student. And after reading that case study and after conducting analysis of that case study, I give that interpretive exercise to my student to give responses related to the information given in that case study. So when the content is given to the student either in the form of numeric or either in the form of qualitative description, the teacher is able to design interpretive exercises based on the content provided. So student will analyze the information and able to give responses to the series of the questions designed by the faculty. So those kind of exercises can easily become the part of your regular assessment activities in a classroom. Maybe after the completion of the unit, I'm going to design one interpretive exercise for my students. So that can also be the choice of the faculty. Next is matching type of an exercise. So matching type of an exercise is a very simple exercise designed by the teacher. So again, it can be used for classroom assessment practices. So in matching type of exercises, there are basically two different columns. So items in the first column need to be paired with the item in the second column. So one can be the statement, another can be the responses. So when we are designing such kind of exercises for the student, first we need to give identity to those columns. So on the screen, it is visible to all of you that match A with match B. So two columns have given different kind of identity, and in the same manner, we need to define the identity to the different statements also. So in the column 1, we write it as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And in second column, we write as A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. So when it comes to designing matching type of an test item, identity to the columns and identity to the different rows need to be given by the investigator or by the question paper setter first. After that only it is possible for us to design these kind of items. Another major rule that we need to consider while designing such type of a test item is group only homogeneous premises and homogeneous responses in a matching type of exercise. So that also need to be considered by the teacher. Then check each exercise for extraneous clues, grammatical interrelationship in terms of number or person. Arrange the list of premises and responses for maximum clarity and convenience to the student. And even when we are designing these type of an items and given it in the final question paper of the student in print form again, we need to consider that matching type of exercise need to be in a single page only, so that it is easy for the student to map between premises and responses without wasting the time. So in print option again, the matching type exercises need to be given in on a single sheet. Keep the list of premises and responses relatively short. So it is only the remembering based on understanding ability that we are going to analyze with these type of exercises. So no more longer sentences are required. Identify items in the first column by number and item in the second column by letter. Explain clearly in the direction, the basis upon which the items need to be mapped. So if there is any special instruction, that instruction need to be given to the candidate beforehand. Place all the items and option for a matching exercises on a single page. So that is again an essential requirement. So these are the certain rules that we need to consider for designing such type of an exercises for our student. So it is the choice of the faculty. So as I'm designing different learning outcomes for my student, I know as a teacher that what are the major essential requirements as far as cognitive, psychomotor and affective ability of the content is concerned for a given subject. Based on that information only, I'm going to decide that what type of items I'm going to design for my student. So this is again the choice of the faculty, but yes, when we are designing such kind of statements, specifically in an online environment, try to avoid these kind of statements directly taken from the internet websites, because those resources are readily available with the student. Try to design items by your own, and then after vetting those question items, only give these statements to the student. So this is all from my side. If there is any question, you all are requested to kindly unmute and ask. Any question from the participant side? In the second session, we are going to do one task based on this particular input only. Yes, any member, if you have any question. 3 minutes left with us. So we have no question
I'd just
available in
like
the
to
chat
thank you,
box
ma'am.
also.
I'd just like to thank you for a wonderful session. It's going to take some time for us to assimilate all that you have shared with us. And I'm sure with the presentation that we'll have, we'll be able to make better, test papers in future. So thank you so much for sharing all the wealth of information pertaining to how to set, papers in the right manner, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank you,
much,
ma'am.
ma'am. I will share this PowerPoint presentation with the coordinator of this course, Dr. Sunil Dutt, sir. And the sir will pass on this presentation to all of you. So maybe in the next session, when you all are performing the activity based on this particular session, we have more clarity that when it comes to design these kind of test items, what can be the probable items we can design for our subject. So thank you very much for the patience listening. So we will meet again at 11:30 for the second session.